You're broken down and tired of living life on the merry-go-round, and you can't find a fighter, but I see it in you, so we gon' walk it out. Move mountains, we gon' walk it out and move mountains. And I'll rise up, I'll rise like the day. I'll rise up, I'll rise unafraid. I'll rise up, and I do it 1,000 times again. And I'll rise up, I like the waves. I'll rise up, in spite of the ache. I'll rise up, and I do it 1,000 times again. The silence isn't quiet, and it feels like it's getting hard to breathe. And I know you feel like dying, but I promise we'll take the world to its feet. Move mountains, bring it to its feet. Move mountains. And I'll rise up, I'll rise like the day. I'll rise up, I'll rise unafraid. I'll rise up, and I do it 1,000 times again. That we have each other, and for that we have each other. And we will rise, we will rise, we'll rise. Oh, we'll rise. I'll rise up, rise like the day. I'll rise up, in spite of the ache. I will rise 1,000 times again. And we'll rise up, I like the waves. We'll rise up, in spite of the ache. We'll rise up, and we'll do it 1,000 times again.
My name is John James, and I started the Grief Recovery Institute over 30 years ago as a result of the death of a son in 1977. I, like many other people that I've met over the years, had made the assumption that because loss was such a common occurrence, that there would be people who were trained and to know how to help. And sadly, what I discovered is that most of the help that people offered was intellectual in nature, and my brain wasn't really broken, it was my heart. So over a period of about 8 months, I discovered a process that helped me to feel better.
When John James created the phrase grief recovery back in the late 70s, almost no one had ever heard the words grief and recovery in the same sentence. And people would say to us, is recovery even possible? To this day, some people still contest it. But we discuss it with them, we argue it with them, and we show them from our own personal experience, from our own losses, how we have recovered and regained a sense of well-being in our lives in spite of the losses that have happened.
The concept that we were operating with at the time was, how do you deliver grief recovery assistance to the largest number of people in the shortest period of time? Consequently, the first obvious thing was write a book. The first book was the Grief Recovery Handbook, which is now in its 4th edition, the 20th anniversary edition, that has been translated into multiple languages. Our book, When Children Grieve, also has been translated into multiple languages. And a third book called Moving On deals with the enormous sadness that revolves around divorce and romantic relationships that don't survive even to the point of a marriage. But even with a book, you're only going to reach a certain number of people. And so we then decided that we would create these grief recovery outreach programs, which are moderated recovery groups where people take very specific actions to heal their heart.
The really neat part is we give a practical, applicable set of actions people can take rather than sitting and waiting to feel better, which most people do because that's what they were taught. So the key here is actions to feel better or different than we felt and not be paralyzed into inaction, which keeps us stuck forever.
We began to train people, individuals, who would then return to their local community and moderate these grief recovery outreach programs. We started out with 4, and now I don't know the number. We have thousands of them now.
One of the reasons I'm sitting here talking today is so that we can make ourselves available to people when the need is. Otherwise they go, I needed you 20 years ago when my daughter died, where were you? And we don't want anyone to have to say that ever again.
Every loss is as the result of the end of an emotional relationship, and every relationship is unique. So everyone grieves at 100% whatever the loss is. And one loss has nothing whatsoever to do with the other.
Part of grief recovery is to unlearn some of the stuff we all learned. So, and whether we learned it professionally or at the feet of our parents, doesn't matter. We have to unlearn some myths about grief so we can learn the method that will help us complete unfinished business.
It is up to the griever when they decide that they are willing and able to come in to do the grief recovery method. It is not up to us to tell them when they have to do that. One of the most heartbreaking things is that we hear from grievers is they call and say, well, I was told that I'm not supposed to come into a group or do any work for a year, which is kind of crazy.
It is never too soon to start to heal your heart. I would say that within 15 minutes following a loss of any kind, the griever's mind is already starting to identify the things that they wish they had done differently or better. I cannot imagine, nor have I seen in 34 years, any benefit accrue to anyone as a result of waiting.
We have a different perspective, and the perspective is 2 things. It's an absolute respect of unique individual human relationships and a recognition of a method of recovery that is available to anyone who's willing to do it.
I don't care where they live, I don't care what their economic status is, I don't care what their religious beliefs are. When you experience a loss, your heart hurts, and we would love to help all the people who are having that kind of an experience.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes. Okay, perfect. Let me, there we go. Okay, can I get the team, the grief recovery team, to unmute themselves, and if everybody else can stay muted, that would be awesome. Raylene, Michelle, Fred, can you go ahead and unmute yourself and turn on your camera, please?
I'm on mute. Can you see me?
I could see you. Yeah.
Good.
Yep.
Where's Fred? Oh, there's Fred. Fred, you need to unmute.
Cut the video.
And we need to see your handsome face, Fred.
All right, everybody. Well,
Almost there.
welcome
Sorry.
to. Are you there? Okay, awesome. Welcome, everybody, to Grief Talk. This is the third in a series of 4 this month in September as we do our part to just honor this month of Suicide Awareness and Prevention Month, and help people to understand that human emotions are all very normal and natural. So we are the Grief Recovery Guam and CNMI team. This is just a few of us. This isn't everybody. And so before I get everyone on to introduce themselves, I just want to talk a little bit about what we are going to be discussing tonight. So our topic today is going to be all about grieving the loss of familiar traditions, celebrations, and cultural practices. And there's so many, right? Especially for those of us that come from the islands. And before we get into that topic, I'm actually going to share my screen one more time. And I just want to share a few things with everybody just to kind of set the platform for us. So here we go. Okay, can you guys see that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay, so we always want to start off with a disclaimer. We are all grief recovery specialists, those of us that are going to be speaking tonight. And so we are not counselors, therapists, or licensed clinicians. We are certified and trained by an organization called the Grief Recovery Institute. So everything that we will be talking about will be based on our certification, the things that we learn, and also through our lived experiences and what we as human beings have gone through when it comes to grief and loss and human emotions. I also want to be transparent and let everybody know that we are live on Facebook. So for those of you that are tuning in on Facebook, welcome to Grief Talk. And then to set the tone for everybody, we just have a few commitments for you guys out there. So we want to encourage you to keep an open mind. A lot of what we're going to be talking about tonight may be things that you are going to be hearing for the first time on how to look at human emotions and grief. There may be some things that we talk about that you never even knew could be defined as grief. So I want you to keep an open mind. The other thing is as we're sharing our stories, we want you to make sure that you're not judging yourself or you're not judging others. What we've learned through our certification and through our journeys is that we are all unique in everything that we do in life, including how we grieve and the things that we believe. And so we just ask that you show yourself grace and not judge yourself as we go through this, as we share our stories. We also ask that you don't compare your losses. What that does is it minimizes what you're going through or what you may have gone through, whether it is a similar event that some of us have gone through, or maybe it's something that you have gone through in your life. And so comparing either losses within your own life or comparing it with other people minimizes what you're feeling and what you need to do to begin your healing journey. So remember, we all feel our human emotions at 100%. And that is determined by, again, us as individuals and our belief system and where we're at in our journey. We also don't want you to apologize for your human emotions. So as we're going through and sharing our stories, it may also bring up some things that are going on in your own life. And so if you feel the need to cry, to feel sad, or whatever other human emotion, I want you to just go ahead and honor that space, acknowledge it, and know that all human emotions are all very normal and natural. So please don't apologize to whoever's around you or even to yourself. Just allow it to happen. All right, so I'm going to stop that share and bring the team back. And so I'm going to ask my team to introduce themselves. But first, I guess I should introduce myself. For those of you that have never met me, have not come on our grief talks before, my name is Darlene Garcia. I am a grief recovery specialist, but even before that, I'm a mom, I'm a grandmother. In my past life, I was an HR professional. So now I still stay in that space, and now I'm an HR consultant. I am also a grief and health and life coach. And what brought me to the grief recovery method was the death of my husband, Frank, 5 years ago. Back then, I didn't know much about grief, at least, what I thought I knew about grief was all wrong. And so when I was introduced to the method, it actually wasn't available on Guam. And so I had to travel to the States to be able to get this workshop and to begin my healing journey. And, I will tell you guys that during that time prior to finding the method, I never believed that I could be happy again. I never believed that, that there was another side of this grief journey that I was going on. And I actually was starting to become content with my life and thought that this was going to be my destiny. And then when I found the grief recovery method and I took it, I literally was able to start believing in hope and saw that small spark of light that I never thought could be possible. So the grief recovery method has been an amazing journey for me from a personal perspective, but also from being a specialist and being there and helping others, teaching them the method and helping them along on their own healing journey. It's been definitely transformational. It's been an honor, and it's also an honor to work with these amazing human beings that you're going to hear from in just a second. So I want to go ahead and bring them forward. If I can go ahead and start with my mom, beautiful Bobby Titano. Mom, if you can go ahead, if you're unmuted, and go ahead and introduce yourself and tell everyone what brought you to the method.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Like Darlene said, I'm her mom. I'm Bobby Titano. I'm a grief recovery specialist, but before that, I'm a wife, a mom, a grandmother, and a great-grandmother. And so what brought me to grief recovery was when my daughter Darlene lost her husband Frank. As a mom, you always want to be able to be there for your children and help them out, and try and be the strongest person for them there. And Darlene was in such a dark place when her husband died from a motorcycle accident. And so when she decided that after she took the grief recovery method and came back home, she was a totally different person. And when she decided that she was going to go and bring the method to Guam and become a specialist, I decided to join her. But when I went to become a grief recovery specialist, I didn't realize that I was also grieving. And I wasn't just grieving the loss of my son-in-law, but prior to my son-in-law passing away, I was also in Hawaii with my husband. He had suffered a massive heart attack, which required us to be medevac to Hawaii so that he could have open heart surgery. And it just so happened that on the day that he was supposed to have surgery, it was postponed because it was an emergency that came in. So we went back to the hotel where we were staying. And when we got the phone call that Frankie had passed away from the motorcycle accident, it was the most tragic news that any mother can receive from home. And so being in a space where I was there to support my husband and be with my husband for his surgery, and then at the same time trying to figure out whether I was going to go home and take care of my daughter and her family because of this tragic accident, it was too much. I couldn't make that decision. And so my husband made that decision for me, and he told me I needed to go home, take care of my daughter, and take care of whatever needs to be taken care of for the funeral arrangements. So I went home, and that was the hardest thing I had to do. On the day that we were having a memorial service for Frank was the same day that my husband was going through his heart surgery. So I don't know how I made it, but I made it through. And going through the grief recovery method has really helped me to be there for to help people that really need help when they're grieving. So that's how I got to the grief recovery method and became a specialist.
Thank you, Mom, for sharing that. Okay, I'm just going to go down the line of what I see on my screen. So, Michelle, you can go ahead and unmute yourself, hon. Tell everybody who you are and what brought you to the method.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Okay, wonderful. Hi, everyone. My name is Michelle Sasimoto. Some of you may have heard my story before. For those of you who have not, aside from being a grief recovery specialist, I'm a mom. I'm a widow. I've been a widow for 8 years. I'm a daughter. I'm a sister. I'm a friend. And I also wear the hat of a prevention professional with the Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center. So I have always worked with grievers for as long as I've known. I work with people that are going through, families who have lost loved ones to suicide. I've worked with people with addictions and in recovery. I've worked with people just, where they feel like they've lost hope in some of the things that they are journeying through life. And so, the death of my husband brought me so much pain, but I didn't realize. I honestly thought that I was like one of the strongest people because I knew how to cover up that pain very well. And what brought me to grief recovery was 4 years after my husband passed away, when I met Darlene. I, along with another individual, we started up a widow women support group to support Dar. And she came, and sometimes it's a good fit and sometimes it isn't. And so Darlene ventured and found Grief Recovery Institute and flew off. And when she came back, Darlene really, truly, she set the word transformation. And I witnessed that transformation when she returned. And I wanted to go out there with the notion that I was going to be a better service provider if I go in and learn what Dar learned, because I can be able to reach more people and help more people. Little did I know that journey was going to be something that I was taking on for my own healing and recovery. And I'm just so thankful and I'm so grateful that I was able to do that, because now I know how to do the work. I want to say that I do with so much compassion and heart, and knowing that because I'm a helper doesn't mean that I'm exempt from loss and pain. So I really appreciate that the tools that I've acquired, I could continue to use in all of my journeys moving forward. So thank you all for being here tonight.
I always smile when you share that story about our widow support group. There's a funny story about that. Maybe we'll tell you guys about that later.
Yeah.
Okay, now we want to bring on a beautiful Raylene Alicto. Raylene is like a daughter to me, and that's because I met her through my daughter. They are actually friends. So Raylene, why don't you unmute yourself, hun, and tell everybody about yourself and what brought you to the grief recovery method.
Sure, thanks, Antonina. Welcome all. I see some returning attendees, so that makes me really happy tonight. And for those of you who are new, I just want to thank you for giving yourself the opportunity to see what we have to offer. I can guarantee you that you won't regret your decision to be here tonight. So like Darlene mentioned, my name is Raylene Alicto, and I'm one of the Island's certified grief recovery specialists. I am also a wife, I am a mother, I'm a daughter, sister, and friend. I also work in the human resources, how do I say it, line of work. And so, most of my days are spent helping the employees for the company that I work for, which brings me, a lot of happiness. And I'm also able to, use the tools that I've learned in grief recovery, even in the simplest of encounters at work or in my personal life. What brought me to grief recovery was back in 2016, my family and I, we were going through something really, really tough. And it was something that really affected my daughter. At the time, my daughter was 4 years old. And she was going through therapy as a result of what she had experienced. And I actually started by attending a grief talk, much like how you're attending one now. And through the grief talk, Miss Bobby Taitano was actually piloting a Helping Children with Loss program. And so I thought, with my daughter going through everything that she was going through, I didn't have anything to lose. Let me just see what this is all about, see if maybe I can help her at home, because she was only going through therapy about twice a month, which is pretty intense. And so I was really trying to find ways to help her at home. And so after attending that particular workshop, I discovered that there was so many things that I didn't know. And so I started practicing the new things that I learned with my daughter. And I'm really happy to report that she no longer has to attend therapy. Her healing journey is just that, it's a journey. So we're never going to get to the final destination, but I'm able to help her through that. And so that's the beauty of the grief recovery method and the tools and knowledge that we have to offer. It's extremely life-changing. And so, I encourage you to, stay the whole night if you can and see, what we have to offer. This is free, and we're going to commit to doing this as often as we can for the community. So welcome again. Thank you.
Thank you, Raylene. And last but certainly not least, our brother from Saipan, Mr. Fred. Fred, can you go ahead and unmute yourself? Tell the crowd who you are and what brought you to the method.
Half a day, kiddo from the island of Saipan. I'm privileged and thankful for this opportunity to join you all. Familiar, I would say familiar, especially with this grief talk. What brought me, outside of grief talk or grief recovery, I'm a husband, a father, also a son, a sibling, as well as a faith-based leader here in our community or in Saipan. What brought me to the grief recovery method was an opportunity through what I do as what I do in the Community Guidance Center, which is the behavioral health side here at our hospital in Saipan. So it was an opportunity to come to Guam and meet Darlene and meet all these wonderful ladies, these wonderful human beings, and be introduced to what grief, the recovery method. And so it was a really eye-opening, life-changing experience for me, and to really be able to just delve deeper to what grief is, because what I've always understood grief to be, it's related more so obviously to the loss of, in regards to death, funeral, losing of loved ones. But when being part of this week-long training and the workshop really enlightened me to really see, it's much more than just the experience of losing loved ones, but it affects us all in everyday life, where we are grieved by one thing or another. And for me, I've had my fair share of experiences with grief, and more so, just fairly recently of losing my younger brother at such a young age, and something that I'm still working through. It's still a journey for me. I don't think I'm still going through my healing and losing him at such a young age, and I'm really thankful for Darlene and for the team there in Guam for really bringing this to our islands of here in the Pacific, and more so here in Micronesia. So an opportunity where our community is in need of something like this, where we can share our stories, share our experiences, and at the same time that we understand, it's something that we somewhere or another, directly or indirectly, we can really just reach someone and make some kind of impact to our community. So I'm thankful for this opportunity this evening to meet you all, and just looking forward to more events such as this in the coming future. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred, and we are so happy to have you here representing the CNMI. It has been a long time coming for us. When we first learned of the grief recovery method and that it was another option to bring out to the island, it really was something that I was so passionate about in the very beginning. That was back in like 2016 when my journey began with grief recovery. And it's always been a part of my journey to make sure that we don't only bring this to Guam, but we bring it to Saipan and the rest of the islands. And so in 2018, Fred and Raylene joined us as new grief recovery specialists with, I think, about maybe 10 or 15 more, was it, Michelle, that we had in addition, right? And so we've got more grief recovery specialists out there, not just the ones that are on panel tonight. And so we just want you guys to know that the islands are here to support your healing journey, whatever that looks like for you. And it doesn't matter where you're at in it. Like Fred says, he's still healing. We all are. I asked everyone to introduce themselves and to tell everybody who they were outside of grief recovery, because we want everyone to know that being a grief recovery specialist does not make us immune to human emotions. In fact, we probably feel it a lot more than most people because we learn that it is so normal and natural to feel. And most often we're taught not to feel those bad human emotions, right? So as we're going through this time, these unprecedented times during this pandemic, that is creating a ripple effect of grief, not just with the virus, but economically, emotionally, mentally. There's so many factors around what this virus has brought to the entire globe. And so we are honored to be here and to be able to share our insights with you, our experiences as human beings and as grief recovery specialists. And we hope that what we share with you tonight will inspire you to begin healing, or at least to acknowledge where you're at with your journey and your human emotions, and then be able to walk away with some tips that can help you real time to be able to do what you need to do to take care of yourself during these times. And then we will talk about what are some of the other resources that are out there, because we aren't the only ones. We are an option. And we always like to tell that to people. We are an option. And so everybody's different. Everybody needs something different. And so we just want to make sure that the community knows that you do have options, right? To begin your journey, and that you're not alone. And then we'll, ask all of you if you've got any questions that you want to ask us, if maybe we didn't touch on something that you wanted to ask. And so feel free to drop your questions in the chat. Michelle will be monitoring those questions. And then towards the end of our discussion, we'll be bringing those questions up, and we're going to answer them in the best way that we can. And then we're going to share our grief programs and what we have out there for you. Again, the options that we provide for you as a grief recovery team. And then we'll wrap up our evening. So again, our topic tonight is all about grieving the loss of familiar traditions, celebrations, and cultural practices. As an island people, those things are so valuable to us. It's all about gathering. And when we can't gather, it creates emotional turmoil, I'm sure, for everybody, because I know it does for me. I didn't mention it in the beginning, guys, but I'm not actually in Guam right now. I'm in Canada. So it is 5:30 in the morning for me, hence why I was picking up a cup of coffee and drinking it while the rest of the team was talking. But I am an island girl. You can't take the island out of me, no matter how far I go. And so it's always my first passion to bring grief recovery to the islands and then around the globe, right? So I'm going to go around and we're just going to be having a discussion, those of us on the grief recovery team, and I'm going to be asking the group some questions, and then we're just going to engage in conversation, and then we'll get to your questions, those of you that are attending here on Zoom. And those of you on Facebook, if you do have questions, drop them in the chat in Facebook as well. We're also monitoring that, and if you've got anything that you want us to bring to the talk tonight, please feel free to drop it in the comments. Okay, so the first thing is the quarantine again has, and the social distancing have significantly impacted our ability to honor, celebrate, and gather in the ways that were familiar to us, right? And one of the things that we learned in our certification is the definition of grief that most of you may not know. And what we're familiar with when it comes to grief is that grief is a normal and natural reaction to loss, right? We always add loss to any kind because it's not just about the death of a loved one. But what really resonates with us, and for me personally, is that grief is the conflicting feelings caused by the end of or change in a familiar pattern of behavior. And so the familiarity of being able to gather, the familiarity of celebrating big or small, has literally been taken away from us because of the quarantine measures and the social distancings that are in place. And so it affects everybody around the globe, but I want to focus in more on our island traditions and the things that we do, because a lot of times we probably gather a lot more than a lot of people around the globe, right? We find every reason to party, to go to the beach, to gather with family and friends. And now that we can't do that, or we're doing it at a very limited capacity, it's definitely affected us emotionally and mentally. So I'm going to go to the team and I'm going to ask each of you to share at least one tradition, celebration, or cultural practice that you have experienced through this pandemic that has brought deep emotional impact to you because of how it changed, or maybe how it no longer exists, right? So some things have changed significantly, just like the definition of grief that I talked about, or some things maybe no longer exist. So I'm going to go ahead and start off with Raylene, and really talk to us, about something that maybe you have experienced over the last several months that you found to be that has affected you emotionally because you weren't able to do it because of this quarantine.
Sure, thank you for that question. So one of the things that, as I reflected on this question, I realized that this year, my daughter was transitioning from 2nd to 3rd grade, and it was the first year that she had made the principal's list. And on top of that, she also made a honor roll. And so, I'm sure parents all around the world love to celebrate, accomplishments like this. And typically we'd have like an award ceremony where I'd be able to invite, both my side of the family and her dad's side of the family to join in the celebration, maybe go to dinner at Sakura Dining, which happened to be her favorite restaurant. She loves the race car that they serve the food in, and really just celebrate in this accomplishment. But we couldn't do that. And so that made me feel really sad. It made me feel like, how am I going to make this up to her? I mean, how are we going to celebrate this for her? This is such a big milestone. And because we were on lockdown at the time, nobody was allowed to come here to my house. So her father and I decided we were just going to do an award ceremony here at home. And I just remember feeling really lost, kind of angry and frustrated, right? Like, why did this have to happen this year? We can't just have like, a little celebration at the school, right? All these things were going through my mind, but that was definitely one that stood out was, Vera making the principal's list, and not being able to celebrate that with her and with our family. So thank you.
Thanks, Raylene. So I'm going to go to Fred. Fred, I know that things are different as far as the quarantine measures in Saipan versus Guam. So you may not have as much restrictions as the ladies do on Guam. But talk to us about something that may have impacted you during this pandemic, that maybe you weren't able to celebrate or practice because of the quarantine measures when it was very restricted.
I think like for myself, mostly like I really, for us here in Saipan, we are very, especially on weekends and being a faith-based, the Sundays gathering together with, as congregations, as different parishes. That was something that really was uh, took a great deal of adjustments, and took a great deal of just being able not being able to gather anymore, not being able to see one another, and some of your parishioners, and some of those that that Sunday this is a huge thing for families. Whether it's going to mass on Sunday morning, gathering together with their friends and family, and being able to go to their places of worship. That was something that was very greatly affected, especially with the lockdown, and with the pandemic. And so many, and I still see it today, that even though the directives and some of the measures have been lowered, and there are now, and there's still a great fear for many just to come, and to, even though we're already said that there's, we're allowed 75% to gather. There's still many that are still afraid, and so I think that's something that's really impacted our community, as with our churches and our places of worship, where many still are, it has been very, very difficult, that this pandemic has greatly affected many, and our community, to have that confidence and overcome, I guess, the fears of being able to step out of their homes and gather or attend a normal Sunday mass or Sunday worship on. And so that was something I have seen, and we're still making those adjustments, and still trying to encourage families and our community that it's okay. We're safe, but still that's a big challenge, and that will probably be a while till we'll see, maybe not even return to back to the norms that we've been used to. Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely a big one. I think for a lot of people that are out there watching, and many of us are, worship. Whether we worship, through Christian, Catholic, it doesn't matter what our faith is. Gathering to worship is big on the islands, and a lot of people have suffered from not being able to do that, and from a spiritual perspective, that can affect your well-being as you move through this pandemic, because that's something that we all gravitate to when things don't go right in our life, right? So thank you for sharing that with us, Fred. I think that in Guam it might be very similar, or maybe the quarantine measures might even impose stricter restrictions for gathering to worship. So I'm going to go to Michelle, and Michelle, go ahead and talk to us about a celebration, tradition, or cultural practice that impacted you during this pandemic.
Wow, this is it's definitely a very emotional ride for me right now, and I actually thought about whether I should share it tonight or not, and I think it's the most perfect time, because again, you just know that even in our heads as specialists, again, we're not exempt from loss and pain. And one of the things that I am experiencing at the moment is, I think I would say it's maybe the traditional practices. And one of the traditional practices that we have is, again, being with friends and family, especially gathering when we have a sick family member, and surrounding them and just being around them. And I just received some news of a loved one who actually is really sick at the moment. And again, we talked about the pre-existing conditions, right? The physical pre-existing conditions. And I can't even imagine what my loved one is experiencing right now. But with the whole lockdown situation, it makes it more difficult, because I can't even be there for the person. I can't be there to just help alleviate, whatever physical pain they're going through, and just to be company. And I can't give hugs because if I am around the individual, then I could put them at risk because of, you know, maybe, I don't know, asymptomatic. And so there's a lot of conflicting emotions, and going through the journey. I feel like, honestly, I feel very alone because I just feel like, I feel helpless in a lot of sense, in a lot of ways. And then I also kind of like intellectualize things, and I'm like, well, you know, and sometimes I feel bad for doing it because I know better. And I'm like, imagine what that person is going through, right? And what all the other family members are going through. So it's a very hard place to be right now, let alone with the pandemic and just even the legal aspects of how we're doing things, where sometimes it just seems like it's very insensitive and there's no compassion, right? With like the lockdown per se. And I know that there is a public story of a lady who lost both her parents to COVID and came back to Guam and was quarantined and wasn't even allowed to be at their funeral. I just can't imagine that. And so it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of allowing myself to be where I'm at. It takes a lot of being very authentic and real and genuine, to be a person that's grieving, but also to be a supporter of the individual that is ill, but also to the other family members that are directly impacted. So, you know, it's one of those things, and you'll hear it later on, but sometimes doing this for me is a way that helps me, because I'm able to communicate it. And I know that at least a couple of you out there, maybe you're not going through the same loss experience, but you could possibly resonate with some of the things that we're saying. So thank you for honoring and just giving me that space, holding space for me at the moment.
Yes, thank you so much for your authenticity and your vulnerability, for sharing that story with us. And definitely we are holding space for you, hon. And, you know, again, guys, I just want to remind you that as grief recovery specialists, we are not exempt from feeling human emotions. And the work that we do just gives us a little bit more tools in our toolbox to be able to effectively get through this journey. And part of getting through it is to feel, right? Is to feel all of those human emotions. So, you know, it's okay to feel bad when something like this happens in your life. You know, when people say don't feel bad, that's actually one of the biggest myths of grief that we have out there. Or to be strong. As an island people, we are taught, you know, to just be strong for people in our lives. And to be honest with you, during this time when we're all feeling so much emotion around all of the different things that we're experiencing, right? It's a relatable event that is out of our control, but the human experience, the journey that we're going through is all individual. And so I want everyone to know that you can feel bad for what you're going through, just like Michelle, and you don't have to be strong, right? Not in this place that we're in. You just need to acknowledge and feel where you're at. So I want to come to Mom, because we were talking about some of the things that you have experienced during this time of, you know, missing the familiarity of some of the cultural practices and traditions and celebrations. So talk to us about some of the things that you have experienced and what emotional impact that has had on you.
Okay, I think what I want to talk about tonight is about funeral. That has really hit me pretty hard too, because I've had several friends that have passed away during this COVID time, and not being able to attend some of the funerals has really, you know, it's hurtful and, you know, it's painful, because some of them are really close. And the one I really remember the most is, I'm also part of the Ladies Auxiliary for the Military Order of the Purple Heart. And one of the ladies passed away. And she's not just a member, she's like a sister, you know, she's part of the family. And whenever we have a member that passes away, we usually have a special ceremony for them, because they are part of the organization. And so we couldn't do that. We couldn't come to the funeral as a group, but I was able to get the family to at least allow me to be there and represent the organization. So I was able to do that. But I wanted to do something special for her. I wanted to at least get her some flowers to take over to the funeral home. And so I made a stop at Payless to at least get her a couple of stems of roses. And then they told me they couldn't sell me flowers because of COVID. And I started to cry in front of the lady, and she goes, "Oh my God." She goes, "I think we have some roses in the back. Can I get you at least a stem of roses or a couple of stems of roses?" And I said, "Oh, please, if you could do that, I will be forever thankful." And so they were able to give me at least one stem of rose. And she put a ribbon on it. She made it look pretty, and she gave it to me. And she goes, "I'm not even going to charge you for this stem of rose. I'm going to go ahead and give it to you, and do what you need to do with it." So, oh my God, it was such an emotional moment for me. So I came to the funeral home, and of course you have to take turns, right? Because you're only allowed, at that time, you're only allowed like 20 people max. So you have to take turns. So as everybody was leaving, and they were making everybody take turns. And so I came in, and I was dressed in my uniform, my ladies auxiliary uniform. And when the family saw me, they all started to cry. And the hardest part was I couldn't even hug them. I couldn't go up to them and hug them and tell them, give them my condolences and stuff. So I just went straight up to the casket and put my rose in the casket and said a prayer for my friend. But that was the hardest thing to do that day. And so funerals, I mean, it's a tradition for us, for our families here on Guam. And it's not only hard for the friends and family that are coming to pay their respects, it's even harder for the family who has lost their loved one. And, even more so now. Can't even take your loved one to church for prayer before you take them to the cemetery. You can't sit down and talk to other people, and just share stories about the person that has passed away. It's like you go in there, say a prayer, and leave. And so that's pretty tough.
Yeah, thank you, Mom. Thank you for sharing that. That woman at the store, that is human compassion at its finest, for sure.
Yes.
My heart goes out to you and to your friend and her family and everyone else, that's watching out there and listening. Funerals are such a big thing for us in the islands. It's a way for us to come together as a people, to be there and to support and to celebrate life and to honor our loved ones for the last time. When Frank died, I used to tell his family, because he isn't from Guam, and he used to tell them that, that was the best place for him to die, was on Guam, because he would not have had the grand funeral and the amount of people that he had to come and gather to pay their last respects, but also to support me and my kids and his family that traveled. And they were amazed. They were amazed at what we did for the 9 nights. They were amazed at what we did for his funeral. It was something they had never seen before. And it just goes to show what we are as a people. And so when we lose something like that, to gather, especially in such a very, very deep way because of the loss that just took place, it affects everybody on so many levels, right? And we can't change, what COVID has done for us. We can only, just acknowledge where we're at and deal with those human emotions, and just, hope and pray that these type of gatherings will be able to come back in some sort of normal way that we remember, right? So thank you for sharing that. I just wanted to share really quick, for me, this year actually marks 5 years that Frank died. And, you know, we celebrate milestones, right? In the islands when there's a death anniversary. And so the 5th year was like that milestone. And we had already planned to have something really big. I had planned to travel back to Guam. Several of Frank's family were planning on joining me and my kids back on the island. And we were going to have a big celebration of life for him and remember and honor him. And we couldn't do that. And I remember being so frustrated that I couldn't come back home for this. Even if I could just be there, you know, I couldn't even do that. And so that brought on so much human emotion for me that I had a hard time trying to figure out how to do this from a virtual perspective or how to do it from a long distance perspective. And in fact, I got so upset that I didn't want to do anything. If I couldn't be there physically to visit him at the cemetery and gather with my kids and my grandkids and the rest of our family, I didn't want to do it. You know, and it took a lot out of me to be able to just, you know, get out of my own way, if you will. And part of that is doing the grief recovery work. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go, you know, later on in this presentation. But, you know, the human emotion that comes with all of the different losses that we experience, the end or the change in a familiar pattern of behavior, and all of these cultural practices and traditions and celebrations that we're no longer able to do in the way that we remember changes it for us. And now it becomes unfamiliar in how we're doing things. And that brings on feelings of grief. So the next thing that we want to talk about is, you know, I want to come back to the team and ask you guys, right? So knowing what you know now about grief through your certification, through doing the grief recovery method for your own personal journey as well in healing, what can you share with the people here on Zoom and those viewing on Facebook? What can you tell them to help them deal with the emotions that come with the loss of all of these celebrations, traditions, and cultural practices? What can they do to help them right now in their time of feeling a lot of these human emotions through these losses? And I'm just going across my board here. So I'm gonna go ahead and start off with Raylene again and talk to us about maybe one thing that you can give to the people on what they can do to deal with their human emotions.
Thanks, Auntie Dar. If there's one thing that I've learned from grief recovery and I've really put into practice is knowing that the myth of don't feel bad is really unhelpful, right? When we tell ourselves and when we tell others not to feel bad, it's almost like a dismissive statement, right? In a sense, telling the person who feels a certain way not to feel, right? So don't feel bad. The first 2 words is don't feel. And, you know, through this pandemic and, you know, having, you know, grieved the loss of different celebrations and traditions, I always remind myself to be kind to myself. And most of all, when you learn how to be kind to yourself and allow yourself to feel, you're able to extend that kindness to others and be that heart with ears for a friend or a family member who may be going through a difficult time. I had a friend who was supposed to get married this year, and she had asked me to be a bridesmaid. And it was going to be my first time being in a wedding. So I was really happy about it. And then COVID happened, right? 2020 happened. And obviously the wedding had to be canceled. And so that was on July 25th. She knows who she is. On that day, I called her, I FaceTimed her rather, and I just had a chat with her, asked her how she was doing, how she was feeling that day, and what her plans were with her fiance on the day that they were supposed to get married. So, you know, that's one tip I can offer our viewers. If you are going through something, be kind to yourself and allow yourself to feel. And we can practice that, you know, by also extending that compassion to others. And if someone is feeling a certain way, we can try our best, right, to break the habit of responding with don't feel bad. And another thing you can say is, you know, it's okay to feel that way. I would be sad too, right? I would be frustrated too, you know, just kind of being a heart with ears. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Raylene. I'm going to come right over to Fred in Saipan. And Fred, what is one tip that you can give to our viewers and our listeners about how they can take care of their or deal with their human emotions when they're, when it comes to all of these losses or changes in being able to celebrate and honor traditions in their life because of COVID?
I feel like when my experiences, and as I've shared, to really as understand that the way that we're going to go about, um, you know, to grieve and to begin to go through this process, that is to really understand that like we can never rush the process. We can, and to really is like what's been mentioned, the many myths that many would say, and even like for us as island people, we're always, I guess, with emotions and with it's something that sometimes we're not really um, knowledgeable about, or maybe how to really go about expressing or talking about emotions. And so I always feel that time time is something that we some say we don't have enough of, but when we're going through this, is that we can never rush, or we can never pressure or try to push the the matter, so we can try to resolve, like as I've shared with my situation in my healing with, there's still an ongoing journey that I'm, and now it's been just last week, was my brother's September 16th, but would have been his 41st birthday. And so how I, of course, reaching many of our family, and that always remember that. And there was a lot of things that were posted through social media. And so those kind of things were very healing for me, very helpful for me. Even though I'm still healing, but just the use of social media, and just reliving some of those moments, talking about stories about his life. And then of course I was able to look at my old wedding DVD, his best man speech that he gave for me, and just seeing him, the way, how excited he was, how happy he was for me for that day. Was those were things that really helped me again with my grief. And again, like I said, time is like to not rush. You can allow yourself as much time as possible, and to never really feel like, and all those many will say, come on, you got to be strong for your children. You got to pick yourself up. You gotta really just, I that's just something that we at times, even with my own family, I would like, just give me my space, as Michelle said, give me my time and my moment, just to to continue with the process. So yeah, that's one thing I think that's key. And even with the line of work that we, and sometimes it being, I don't know, as being a guy, we always try to figure out resolutions, solutions straight away. Even with my wife, when she, shares things to me, and I'm like, no, we just gotta give time and just open your ears and zip it. Another simple way to say it, but just give time for yourself to, just to reminisce, to reflect, to heal, and yeah, through this journey while dealing with your grief. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Fred. Yes, I love that you say that, just remembering, enjoying those fond memories. And, for those of you out there again, listening or viewing here on Zoom, if fond memories become too painful to remember, then we want you to reflect on where you've got a lot of what we call unresolved grief. And those are the things that we can help you with as grief recovery specialists, because grief is a normal process. As Fred says, you just have to go through it, right? And sometimes, for many people, going back and reminiscing and laughing and smiling and looking at pictures and, sharing memories with each other is comforting for family and friends. But for others, it becomes really difficult. And it's during those difficult times that we want you to recognize that, there is definitely a lot of healing that needs to be done in your life if you find yourself in that space. I'm actually going to skip over to Michelle and Mom and ask you guys actually the next question. For the sake of time, I want us to be able to get to all of the questions that we have in the Zoom chat, because apparently we have a lot, which is awesome. I love that we're going to have some engagement coming from our attendees here. So Michelle and Mom, this question is for you. So this pandemic as a whole has caused human emotions to spin out of control for many, right? Including ourselves. Remember I said we're not exempt from human emotions. In fact, we probably feel it more than most people now. We may know more about grief than most, but it doesn't exempt us, right? So how have you practiced self-care from an emotional perspective during these times? I'm going to start off with Michelle.
So first of all, I, again, had to remind myself that being strong is a myth and I don't have to accept it. And one of the things that I was able to do, because there are several things that I was dealing with throughout these past, gosh, it feels like 20 years now, this pandemic, but it's only been about 6 months, 8 months, maybe. But with the situation that I shared this evening and the illness of a loved one, right? And this person is very dear to me. One of the things that I did initially when I found out, when the person had told me, was I basically said, because again, in our customs and our upbringings, we're told, family members are told, don't show your emotions in front of the person who's sick, because you could actually make them feel really bad, or it's not going to be helpful to their healing. And I stopped buying that a while ago, and I was able to communicate and give my truth a voice and speak my truth and say, this sucks, this situation that you have just shared with me, and this illness that you are facing right now, it's so uncertain, and I am really sad about it, and I am angry about it, and I'm sorry, but I can't be strong the way you think that I'm going to be strong. Being strong for me is me being able to show you how I feel in the moment, whether it's going to be that it's affected me emotionally and I'm going to have to cry in front of you. You're going to know that. And the person really appreciated it, and allowed me. And I'm like, okay, are you ready? And then, it was like waterworks, and I just cried and delivered my communication. And after that, I was a little bit better. And so that was one of the first things that I've kind of put into place with this. So be honest with the individual. If you're going through a grief experience with a certain individual that's still here, that's still alive, be very honest, speak your truth so that there's no regrets. And secondly, what I have also done was I have given myself to be given permission to be an ugly mess emotionally. Sometimes there are days where, I'm in bed a little longer than I want to be. But if I'm there, I give myself that opportunity, because a lot of times, again, replacing the loss and keeping yourself busy are myths as well. And sometimes we just do that to forget that we are experiencing and feeling the pain that we are going through. Last night, on my drive back from dropping off food to my loved one, I was in deep prayer mode, and I still, with my deep faith and my belief, I still questioned, I'm like, Lord, but what's going on? What's happening? And I just want to say that, I cried the whole way through. It was probably about, I want to say 8 miles. And I had screamed in my car at the top of my lungs. And I gave myself that space, and I was able to do that. And when I was done, I had to come back. My daughter was home, and I collected myself, and she knew that something was going on. And she's like, what's going on? I said, we'll talk about it later. But I didn't hide what I was feeling. So that's what I'm basically sharing with you guys, is be real with yourself first, and then also be real with the people that are surrounding you, and give yourself that opportunity again to feel that mess, to feel the suck, to feel the angry emotions and those sad and painful emotions as well.
Thank you for that. Yes, it is very important, everybody, that you look at being strong as actually being vulnerable, right? Because it takes so much more courage to be vulnerable and share your human emotions than it does to stuff it up. And stuffing it up can actually be so much more um, impactful in a negative way, and lead to very unhealthy practices for you as a human being. So be kind, give yourself grace. Like Michelle says, scream at the top of your head if you need to. That's allowing your human emotions to flow through you. Mom, what about you? What is one way that you can help people to take care of their heart, and to really just take care of their emotional well-being during these times?
Yeah, you're right. During this pandemic, it's so important to take care of your heart, you know. And my my tip on taking care of your heart is take time to connect with others, whether it be social, because social and physical distancing can really feel a lot like isolation. So the opposite of action of isolating is participating. Okay, so some of the things that are some of the ways that you can do to participate in taking care of your heart is, get on a video chat with your friends, your family, whoever it is that you haven't spoken to in a long time. Get on that video chat. Call someone on the phone. Just talking to someone really can make you feel a lot better. You know, take a break. I'm so tired of watching CNN and listening to all things pandemic, coronavirus. It just, it's just so I've consumed so much of it that I don't even want to hear it anymore. So I have to take some time out, leave the room, go to the back, and just take some time to myself. Read a book, listen to some music. Those are some of the things that you can do to take care of yourself. You know, work on a puzzle. Oh, there's all kinds of things that you can do to just get away from all the negative news that are happening today. You know, of course, it's important to know what's going on in the world, but that's all you hear day in and day out. So we all need to just step back and take care of yourself.
Thank you. Thank you for those tips. Those were awesome tips. And then this one is going to go out to all of you. I mean, feel free whether you want to answer or not. This is the last question, and then we'll go into what questions are coming from our attendees. So, the late Russell Friedman from the Grief Recovery Institute always told us that when your heart is broken, your head doesn't work right. So if you think about that, those of you that are watching, when you think about your own journey and what you're going through in life, especially when you're dealing with a lot of deep grief, you get forgetful. Sometimes things just can be confusing to you, and that's because your heart is broken, right? So we've given you some tips. We've told you some things about what the myths of grief are. So what are the things that you shouldn't be doing that are the wrong things that we've learned, like don't feel bad or be strong, or grieve alone. Those are things that are myths of grief that we teach in our method. And so it's okay to feel bad. You don't have to be strong. In fact, just be vulnerable, and don't grieve alone. There's always someone there, including us, that can be what we call a heart with ears for you when you need it. And so, I want to go to my team here and see what kind of tips you can give to our viewers and our attendees about what they could do different, right? So we're not replacing the loss, because again, that's one of the myths. We're not replacing it, but we are going to pivot and do something different, because there are things that we can't control in the environment that causes us to not be able to do things a certain way. So there are creative ways that we can do things. And before I go to my team, I just want to share with you just a little bit about what I did. I told you guys earlier that it was Frank's 5-year anniversary, and I didn't want to do anything for him, right? Because I couldn't come to Guam physically. But when I did the grief recovery work on myself, because I knew that I was grieving not being able to honor my husband in the way that I wanted to, in the way that I had planned to with my family, we then were able to come up with some creative ideas. And to be able to do it on the virtual platform, to be honest with you, allowed for more people to participate. And I didn't realize the impact that it would have on not just myself, but on Frank's friends and his family across the globe that were not going to be able to travel to Guam. And so it ended up being a celebration of his life and sharing memories and laughing online and people posting things. We have this private group chat that is all about honoring Frank Garcia. And I've created that group chat since he died. And so every so often I'd post pictures or, memories, and people would do the same. And we use this group chat to honor him for, I think it was 7 days that we did it. So for a whole week, we honored him, his life, the lessons that we learned from him, what were some of the funny things and the things that made us smile about him. And it was amazing to learn things about my husband that I didn't know, as a child, and his cousins and his friends that were sharing some memories that made us laugh, made us cry. But we were able to gather on a virtual platform, and it was one creative idea that we came up with, and it wouldn't have been able to do that because I was stuck in my head. My head wasn't working right because my heart was broken. And once I was able to heal from that, I was able to lead my family and Frank's family and friends into an amazing way. And everyone shared their ideas on what we could do. And it ended up being super cool. So, this is going out. It doesn't matter who wants to answer, but give our viewers one tip, one creative idea that people could do today, because we can't gather the way we wanted to. We can't celebrate and honor the way we used to. So what is one creative idea that people can do to do something different and still be able to do these things in their life? Anyone of you can answer that.
I'll talk about a special funeral that I saw the other day on what they did. This was a lady that worked for DOC, Darlene. I think you saw that as well. But I thought that was the neatest way that they did the funeral, because they couldn't have everyone participate in the actual ceremony. So what they did was they when they were done with the ceremony inside the corrections facility, they had all these people that used to work with this person. They were all lined up as the cars were going by, and they were waving goodbye. It's like they were throwing kisses and stuff like that. And then they each got into their car and followed them to the cemetery, and they all lined up outside. They were all in a line, and they were paying their respects from a distance. And it was so beautiful the way it was done. So those are some of the creative things that people are coming up with now in order to celebrate the departure of their loved one. And I thought that was so heartwarming. I mean, it just touched my heart. And I thought that was the greatest thing.
It was beautiful. I watched that online myself as well. Just remembering AJ Tedpahagu. She was a correction officer that worked with my husband, and she lost her battle to cancer, and it was heartwarming and heartbreaking at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Right, because we couldn't hug, people couldn't gather the way they used to, but they came up with this beautiful way to still pay tribute to an amazing woman. And I thought that was, it was absolutely beautiful. Anybody else want to share a creative tip to our viewers?
I think, like what Auntie Bobby was just sharing, that was, of course, the awesomeness of social media. And like, I guess here on our island, especially, with our schools having to close, and, especially class of 2020 not been able to, some of them maybe we're not able to have proms, we're not able to, of course, their graduation. But one neat thing, and it was something that I really, loved about how our community kind of came together, each of the high schools, and were, announcing about graduations. And so they had like a parade, and so they drove around the island, and whoever, wherever they at with the school, it was so nice to see families go out there, and they were setting up their areas, where the parade was coming, and just to cheer on. So our office, we were able to, because one of our bigger high schools, we're right there near them, and so we were able to come out and just stand there and cheer them, and just and it's just see their excitement. Though of course, with not having to been able to really celebrate their graduation, and it was really neat. It was very creative, having them do that, and families really decorating their vehicles and having their graduates stand on the back of the truck or stand up through their sunroof. That was awesome. So I really and now I think this is catched on. So many now we're gonna do, like, rather than just the waving side, the roadside waves. Everybody's gonna start drive around and start beeping horns and honking horns just to gather more support from the community, whatever the message or the event that we wanted to celebrate. So that was something pretty neat that I saw happening on our island.
Wow, that is awesome. I've heard a lot of different creative stories on how people celebrated graduations around the globe, but I saw so much coming from Guam. So it was nice to hear what you guys did in Saipan, and that's the beauty of being a small island community with such big hearts, because even if you don't know the people, you know them because they're an islander, and so you're just out there cheering them on. And wow, having that parade around the island, right? You could do that because your island is small enough that you can literally parade around the island. And it was that's an amazing tribute and testimony to what happens when people gather and come up with creative ideas, and also when you are able to just acknowledge that this sucks, we can't do it the way we want to. The class of 2020 is definitely going to be a class that everybody will remember. It's going to go down in history because they were the first class that had to get creative in this way. And there was a lot of human emotions, so many conflicting ones from both the graduates and the family and friends that were going through this year. So thank you, Fred, for sharing that. That was amazing. Anybody else, Raylene or Michelle, did you guys want to add something, a tip, creative idea?
Sure, I'll add one. I just want to share that, like I mentioned earlier, my friend, she was supposed to get married and I was supposed to be part of the wedding. So one of the things you can do is contact people who would have been involved in these celebrations, traditions, or practices, people that would have been there if it still went on, and talk to them about how you're feeling, and maybe they could talk to you about how they're feeling. The thing that we should realize is these rituals, they're very significant to us. They mark significant transformational milestones in our lives, be it funerals, weddings, baby showers, gender reveals, even celebrating something like my daughter's principal's award. So, being kind to yourself and connecting with others who would have been involved could help to bring on some support. So that's another tip.
Thank you. Michelle, do you have anything?
Just real quick, and again, we're getting used to technology, and I know I honor those that don't have access to technology, but if you do, find a way to share it. And one of the things that I saw recently was a birthday, and it was a friend's birthday, and her sister had messaged all this individual's friends and had asked them to send her a video by a certain time frame, a video of just a short message, and they collectively put it on Instagram stories. And oh my gosh, when I was watching it, I felt like I was the birthday girl. It just was so beautiful. It was such a beautiful tribute. And I think that's an amazing way also to reach out to those, again, people that we love that are sick and we can't get close to them at the moment. Maybe even families that have lost loved ones that may have to go through this ordeal alone. You can send them these messages and they can play it at their convenience, or any other occasion that may have taken place and you weren't able to be a part of it. You can just kind of like solicit all these different videos and then share it with one person, like a facilitator, family leader, and they could play those videos for the individual or the family.
That is awesome. Yes, social media, or just being able to connect online, virtually, is the way of the world today, right? I mean, we all hope that we can go back to a physical environment where we can do it the way we used to. But the reality is that our world has changed, and I'm not sure that it'll even go back to the way it used to be, right? But when you look at evolution and generation after generation, we've changed, right? The way it used to be in 1920 is not the way it is today. And so we've had to evolve and change as a human race as generations are going by us. And so, I always say that I never thought that I would live to experience something like this global pandemic that has really shifted humanity in a way that I never thought could happen. But it's also showed, that we are a human race with a lot of resolve, a lot of compassion. And that may not be true for some people, depending on where you live in the world. But I'm very proud to say that I am an island. I'm an island girl, and I know that despite all of the things that are happening with this pandemic, as islanders, we do find ways to show love and compassion to each other, and I just want to encourage that to everybody. However way you can do that, find it, a small way, a big way, any way. Fred was sharing a heart and a clapping of the hands, right here on Zoom. And, that reminds me that if you are on social media, non-verbal or non-communication is also a loud message. And so when somebody posts something about being sad, about being frustrated, about being scared, sharing something on social media that is your friend or your family member, even a sad face emoji, showing a broken heart, those things are still better than nothing, right? Because people are posting these things because they need to feel this connection with others. And so, being able to validate that they are going through something through a sad emoji or a broken heart emoji, or putting a small comment or side messaging them, whatever you feel comfortable with, that message can go a long way. And to be honest with you guys, that can also save a life, right? Because this person could be someone that is reaching out. And if no one comments, if no one says anything to them, they feel even more alone and isolated. And that could lead to some very drastic measures, such as taking their own life. So I want to encourage everybody to do that, to show more compassion to others, and even more compassion to yourself. Mom, you raised your hand. Did you have something?
Yeah, I have one last tip to give. Do the grief recovery work. And if you're not ready to do the work, they sell our books on Amazon. You can get a book for like $10, and you can get the grief recovery handbook. You can do When Children Grieve, Pet Loss. Those are the different books that we have with the grief recovery. Or you can go into the website on Grief Recovery Institute and become a specialist and help others heal.
Thank you for that, and we will definitely share a little bit more information on that, guys, as we before we wrap up. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Michelle so that she can moderate the questions that came from Zoom, and then the four of us can just take turns, I guess, answering depending on what the question is. So if you guys, Raylene and Fred, can unmute yourselves and be ready to respond. Go ahead, Chuck.
Okay. So thank you for all those who had just shared their experiences, who have offered comments to us, and for your questions. I just want to go ahead and start with the first question. The question is, how do we reach out to our dear family and friends who have experienced the loss of a loved one during this pandemic? No actual closure for all of us.
Anybody want to take that?
I can take it. Thank you, Michelle. So, I really want to just go back to, what we learn about creating a safe space for others, right? Plant the seed, send them a message, give them a call. If you live with them, you can even ask them, how are you doing? How are you feeling? Are you okay? And allow them to share openly what they're feeling, as you share openly what you're feeling, and giving each other the safe space will help to create the atmosphere of, verbalizing emotions. And this will help both, the person who's reaching out and the family members to, kind of shift their mindset, and, go in the direction of sharing openly what they're feeling. I think also, giving the message that you're not alone, is definitely helpful. As Darlene mentioned, and Michelle, and we've all touched on it, is um, making sure that you don't grieve alone. And if you see that someone's grieving alone, sometimes they just don't know any other alternatives. Grieving alone is a taught behavior. So, again, influencing them to share openly their emotions is definitely the first step. And everyone, I read the question and it says no actual closure for all of us. I want to remind our viewers that every person's grieving journey is different, right? So, not to expect that you will all move forward in the same direction at once, respecting the pace of others and allowing them to be in that space for as long as they need to, and just making sure that they know that you're there for them, is really all you can do. So
The other part to that I want to just add is, you talked about closure, and in the grief recovery method, we actually don't use the word closure; we use the word completion. And sometimes just a word, changing a word, can make a huge difference in how you think about something. And so, when you think about a relationship with a loved one, you can't put closure to that. You're always going to remember them. You're always going to love them, whether they're here or not here. Whether you're physically in a relationship with them or not, there's always going to be that human emotion that's going to be attached to the individual. So we never say closure, because it's a really hard one for people to swallow, especially when they've lost a loved one that has died. Like, I remember when my husband had died, and people would tell me that I needed to find closure. And I'm like, I could never close that chapter of my life, right? And so it was really more about completing the attachment to the emotional pain that came with his death. And so that's what we teach in the grief recovery method. And, that made a lot more sense to me as a widow than finding closure. The other thing is, know that grievers don't need to be fixed. They just need to be heard. We teach and practice this in our daily lives of being a heart with ears. And what that means is that we are just there actively listening to someone without offering advice, without telling them how to feel, without judging their journey, like Raylene says, and just honoring their space. And you will realize that when you become a heart with ears with someone, you truly are engaged and listening to them in that present moment, because your mind is now, it doesn't have to think about what your response is going to be, because you don't have to say anything, right? And remember that, as people are grieving, they're not there for you to tell them it's going to be okay or be strong. Those type of things are they don't serve a person that is grieving, right? So just be there. And sometimes even saying I don't know what to say is so much better than trying to come up with the right thing to say, right? So that, I hope that helps the person that asked this question. Do we have another question, Chef?
Yes, we do. The next question is, how do you best assist someone who has experienced a family who has died from suicide and they feel guilty for not preventing such an ordeal?
Who wants to take that one?
For what we've done here on Saipan, and with of course the tragedy of losing one to suicide, we as what we do, we try to make that make it known to them that it's never anyone's fault about what has happened, that we want to make it known to them that we're here to here to listen, despite the the tragedy of losing one to suicide, and we always try to like, again, that's probably a myth that is, well, not probably, but it is a myth where you know, even where I see it on our island where we're more when it comes to suicide. Yeah, there's still so much that um, stigma, something that we really don't want to address, and we have so many families on our island that we've just, as long as we've just gone and talked to them and just gone there to visit and just to let them know, this is never anyone's fault, even whether the blame is on how things were communicated, when there were people that were aware of things and no one ever reached out, no one ever. But it's just something that we still, it's a very sensitive and hard issue, or hard thing to address. Even like with our faith-based, we had a situation with in our church, and again, like I said, this was someone mentioned earlier, there's still no closure, and many, even a lot of us that were affected by it are still working through the healing, and we're still on this journey to um, help one another, bring healing to one another. But those are, I think, a myth where who's to blame. Of course, that understanding of what could have been done, who should have should have responded to this and this and this. Where you know we're trying to point the finger, but it's really difficult now to really try to after at hindsight. But we always just try to make it known we're here to provide this grief and be able to talk about this, address this, and at the same time for many others that have been impacted by mainly families, and to let them know when many that we've responded to, they're thankful that we've responded, that we've made and known to them that there is services, there are us in the community that really, but many when they're ready, and so we don't, like, again, we give it time and like allow time just to at times be the part of the process until they're ready to reach out. But like, I guess I don't know whether I've answered it or not, but that's just how the approach we're really what we've been continuing to as a prevention worker, and what we do with suicide prevention. But it's still something very sensitive, but we provide that support and love and continued dialogue for our community.
Right.
Thank you, Fred. Michelle, did you want to touch that one, since you also come from that space?
Yes. So I also work, like I mentioned earlier, at the behavioral health here in Guam, and I am a consulting trainer for the Applied Suicide Intervention Skills Training, which is a suicide first aid training. And with other survivors that I have worked with, and when I refer to survivors, they're family members or loved ones who have lost someone to suicide. The natural tendency, the person who asked the question used the G word, and in the Grief Recovery Institute, we've learned that the G word, which is guilt, that many grievers will feel guilty, or they would use that word. And the definition that I've learned through Grief Recovery Institute is guilt is an intent to harm. So I always ask, the survivor, when they tell me that they're feeling guilty, I would ask them the question, was there any intent to harm your loved one, your individual? And they're like, of course not. No, I wanted to help them. And I'm like, okay, then maybe that's not the correct word to use. Maybe you might feel like a little bit disappointed in yourself that you couldn't help them better or different or more. And so I just want to say, like, I teach all of my participants who come into my trainings that when you're helping a family member who is thinking about suicide, there's a chance that this individual has been thinking about it long before they have even approached you about it. And sometimes they don't even come out and tell you, or, it would go unknown. But when that happens, and someone does take their life, one of the things that I always offer to survivors is to seek help, whether it be, again, just by talking about it, because like Fred said, the stigma that is attached to that, the shame, the you know, survivors feel like they felt the individual, especially think about it if you were somebody very, very close to the person. But get the help that's needed in resources, whether it be the more informal helps like your friends and family members, or whether it be through your clergy or pastors, or whether it be through counselors, or then again, the clinical people, or the grief recovery specialists like myself. So I would encourage, if you are approaching a family member who has lost someone to suicide, the first thing to do is not avoid it, right? Everybody's walking on eggshells when this topic comes up, but I like to be very real and say, you know, I can't imagine what you are going through right now, but I just want you to know that I'm here for you. And it must be very scary, but there's ways and there's resources out there that can help you. And I think just planting that seed with family members can show that there's support, and you're basically giving permission to not dance around. You're giving permission to be very clear about the topic, and that we don't have anything to be ashamed about. Because again, we want the family members to get the support and the help that's needed.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Just really quick before you get on to the next question, for those of you that are on Zoom, I know that we've reached the 90-minute mark, and that's what we said. Our grief talk was going to be 90 minutes. And so, you know, I just want to respect your time. And if you need to log off, you know, please don't hesitate to do that. We will just be a few more minutes. I believe that we have a couple more questions, and then we'll go into talking about the additional resources that are on both islands, including our grief recovery method programs and what we can offer you as a grief recovery team. So we're probably looking at maybe another 20 minutes or so. Okay, go ahead, Cha.
So the next question is, what is the best approach to advise a grandmother who is totally saddened, depressed, and grieving after finding out that a grandson has gone through a transgender operation?
I'll go ahead and take that. Okay, the best thing to do is be a heart with ears. Let grandma talk about why she is feeling the way she is feeling. And while she is telling her story, do not interrupt, because I think all she wants is to be heard. So be a heart with ears.
I think in addition to that as well is allowing her not only to acknowledge her own feelings, but also encouraging her to respect and honor the feelings of her grandson in the decisions that he's made in his life. Again, we're all unique human beings, and our journey in life, whether it be grief or the sexual preference that we choose, the people that we choose to be around, the decisions that we make, our belief system, it's all different. It's all unique to each of us. I always say that it's as unique as a handprint. You know, I know that sometimes, especially in the islands, you know, our elders, we respect them so deeply, and we don't want to say anything that's going to disrespect them, but they definitely come from a belief system that a lot of times is different than what we know now about grief. And so sometimes it is hard to get through what we call our sinus, right? And so, you know, just keeping that deep respect with them, but also honoring your space and allowing you as a person to just go ahead and be okay with where you're at with your own emotions and your own belief system. And so for grandson and grandmother, that sounds like there might be a lot of healing that needs to be done in that area. And we'll talk about that as we talk about our grief recovery programs and why we feel that our programs can be so transformational for people that are going through something like that, what we call unresolved grief. And I think several of the questions already touched on unresolved grief and how do we communicate so that we can heal through that. So thank you for that question. Okay, next. Anything?
Okay. And we are, I believe it might be the last question. So the last question is, how can a parent help their child grieve the loss of a grandparent and or relative? What resources are available in Guam for children who are grieving?
think Raylene can take that one.
Yeah, working with children is definitely my niche. But you know, I just want to throw it out there that with the loss of a grandparent, right, your children are experiencing lost or unmet hopes, dreams, and expectations for the relationship with the grandparent, right? And so really bring ourselves to understand what a lost or unmet hopes, dreams, and expectations are. After that, what you could do in the meantime is start with yourself. Go first. Be honest about how that loss has affected you, how you feel about that. My daughter's paternal grandparents recently relocated to Las Vegas, and she cries very often because she misses them so much. They used to babysit her as early as 6 months old, and she's 8 now. Um, we would go to church every Sunday just so that she could see her grandmother, and they would come up and visit multiple times a week. Um, she's definitely having a difficult time, and so usually before I tuck her into bed, I ask her how is she feeling, what is her, what her day was like, and she would always she cries and she says, I miss Mama, I miss Papa. And so I ask her, do you want to call them? Do you want to call them tomorrow when it's morning time in Las Vegas? We could call them. And I'm not trying to fix her. I'm just here to help, to listen to her so that she could feel a little bit better. So again, going first and acknowledging their food. And at the end of the session, I believe Darlene has an upcoming session, a workshop for helping children with loss. So that's definitely something you can avail to as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Raylene. Michelle, do we have any other questions?
That's all the questions.
Awesome. Thank you again, those of you that are here on Zoom, for participating by asking us those questions. We appreciate that. And if you've got any additional questions later on, you could definitely visit us on our Facebook page, Giving Grief a Voice, and someone will get back to you as soon as we can. So I am going to share my screen one more time, and we're going to go back to the slides so that we can share with you what are some of the additional resources that are out there. So let's see. Okay, so I'm gonna defer this to Michelle for the Guam resources, and then Fred for the Saipan ones.
Okay, so again, the more resources, the better. And I always like to say, if you know all the menus of the different restaurants that you have in your refrigerator, you guys still have those that's held by magnets. I would recommend for you to put up this resource as well, so you have it handy, or you could just save it to your phones. But these are the free services that we have here on the island: the 24-hour crisis hotline that is operated by the Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center. That is 647-883-3334. We also have, if you just want to call in to inquire about the services at the department, that's 647-5440 for the behavior health. ISA Psychological Services is operated under the University of Guam, and they offer counseling services, and it's free of charge to the public as well as UOG students. That is 735-2883. And Sanctuary Inc., this number is the 24-hour youth hotline number again, because we do know that our children go through grief and loss. And this is the number 475-7100. And then you have the National Prevention Lifeline, 800. I believe it does work from Saipan as well as Guam. You call this, you will have a crisis counselor at the other end of the line at any time of the day, able to talk to you.
Okay,
Fred?
thank you.
For us here in Saipan, we have the Community Guidance Center line number there, which is the 323-6561 or 6560 or 61. And under there is, you will find all our programs, L1 included, the youth suicide prevention program, systems of care. We're all under that, the behavioral health side here at the Community Guidance Centers. We also have Caradot, where you can reach out to that. They also have the women's shelter. Then they're the ones too that take care of the victim hotline, where you can call there to 670-234-5100, or you can call the direct offices phone numbers there, 670-234-68 6981 or 5248. And as Michelle mentioned, yes, we don't have the 24-hour crisis hotline for Saipan, but to call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. But we also highly recommend just to call our 911, our emergency number for if any situation where involves one's at risk of self-harm behaviors or suicide behavior. So we ask that, just to call 911 or reach out to our victim hotline, and we'll still be able to offer assistance and help for our community here in Saipan, as well as Tinian and Rhoda.
Awesome. Thank you, Fred. Thank you, Michelle, for sharing that. And again, everybody, there are definitely a lot of resources out there in the islands. So whatever you feel is going to work best for you, like Michelle says, hope you guys took a screenshot of that. If not, there will be a replay on our Facebook page, or you can get a hold of me through my email address, because most of you would have gotten that if you're on Zoom, and I can definitely share that slide with you. So this is what we have available as a grief recovery method team in both Guam and Saipan. So right now, because of the pandemic, most of us are not able to do this in a physical environment. And so we have, thankfully, been able to get some of us certified to do this online. So not everyone on our team is able to do it online, but we do hope that they will be getting their certifications to get the online format, so that there'll be more of us helping throughout the islands. So let me just talk a little bit first. I'm going to jump first to the grief support online. This is a one-on-one program that we teach. At the moment, myself and my mom, Bobby Taitano, are certified to teach this program online. It is, again, a one-on-one format. It is 7 sessions long, usually about an hour long. Just really depends on you as the griever and how much you want to share with us. Coming soon, really, really soon, we have Kate Baltazar Dodge and Michelle Sinico Sasamoto, who will be advanced certified in a few weeks. And then Raylene is getting ready to get hers as well. So we've got a few of us that are able to do that one-on-one grief program online. Again, it's 7 sessions. We're very different from a counselor or a therapist, where our programs are time-based. And so we don't go beyond these amount of weeks or amount of sessions unless you need to work on additional relationships, and you'll understand what we mean by that when you take our session. So please email me if you want more information about our one-on-one online program, or go to our Facebook page, Giving Grief a Voice, leave us a message, and myself or my mom, Michelle or Kate or Raylene will get back to you when one of us are available, and we can work with you on your schedule. The other program that we have online now is called Helping Children with Loss. And this one here, at the moment, I am the only one that can do this online, but the ladies will definitely be ready to do this as well, as soon as more certifications are put on the calendar with the Institute. So Helping Children with Loss is all about teaching adults. It's not about us teaching the kids. So it's teaching adults some effective tools that you can use to help children as they navigate through losses in their own life. I always tell people that children are not half human, they're full human. And they feel the exact same human emotions that we all feel, and the gravity of their emotions are all felt at 100% by each of them individually. But a lot of times as adults, we minimize their loss, or we feel that it's our role to tell them how to feel and to judge their journey. And that just teaches kids to isolate, to not share their human emotions. And then they go through life dealing with human emotions in a very unhealthy manner. And, it's no fault to anybody. It's just, none of us really learned the right way to grieve. And so that is why those of us on this call here and the rest of our team that wasn't able to join us tonight are so passionate about going out there and sharing our journey with all of you and what we know about grief. Because even just that small tip of feeling your human emotions, acknowledging them is extremely important. Sorry. And so I talked a little bit earlier about unresolved grief. Unresolved grief is what we actually can help you with. And so grief is normal and natural. We expect everyone to feel that, acknowledge it, and allow those human emotions to flow through you. What keeps us stuck is all of the unresolved grief that we deal with in our life. It's all about the undelivered communication. Michelle talked about it, all of the unmet, I think, or Raylene did, all of the unmet hopes, dreams, and expectations, right? Wishing things could be different, better, or more. Those are all of the things that we end up regretting in life when we lose a loved one or when a relationship ends. And so these are the things that we can help you with. So when it comes to children, it's the same thing, right? It's just that we give you a different tool to help the kids because the kids can't understand it in the adult format because their human minds are not yet mature enough to do it in the manner that we do it. So we give you another type of tool to help you to help your kids. And so I actually have a couple of programs coming up September 29, and these are all in Chamorro Standard Time, so it's all on your time zone. September 29 at 8:30 in the morning, October 3rd, 8:30, and then October 8th, 7:30. This is a 4-session program. Each session lasts about 2.5 to 3 hours long, so a little bit longer than the grief support, and that's because it is a group format. But I can also do it as a one-on-one, which is the beauty of doing it online in the physical format. We only did it as a group session. And so I just want to be able to offer that to you guys. And actually, because we're in the middle of this pandemic and economically, financially, people are struggling all over the place. I want to offer what I call a 2-for-1 special. And, a lot of that is not just from the economic perspective, but sometimes people coming to programs like this, they don't want to come alone, right? Because we're talking about some really deep things. There's a stigma around talking about human emotions. And so maybe if you come with a partner, you'll have a little bit more courage. And so, we'll talk about that. Send me an email and I can talk to you about the details of the program, how it works, what it costs, and then we can go from there. So we do have other programs that are going to be coming on the virtual platform. And I took those off. I think I had it on last week, but I took those off because they have no relevance right now. But as soon as those are able to be taught in the virtual platform, we'll definitely share that on our Facebook page. And we want to invite all of you guys to find your option, right? Whether it was one of the choices that Michelle and Fred talked about or our programs, just know that there are definitely resources out there. I'm going to stop this share really quick so I can come back to you guys and just kind of close it out. So again, we want to thank you guys. We want to honor your space. And, we appreciate your time that you spent with us. We know that this could be a time that you were spending with family, having dinner, unwinding after a day of virtual work, if you will, or maybe in the physical environment. So thank you for giving us your time, for respecting our time as well, keeping yourselves on mute. We appreciate that. Sometimes in the virtual platform, people are struggling with Zoom and not really knowing how to use it. So we appreciate that as well. So with that, we do have another grief talk, our final grief talk for September, which is going to be next Wednesday. So we invite all of you to come back on the platform as soon as we create the flyer and we have the registration link. We'll definitely put it out. Rachel, my email address is darlenegarcia.griefrecovery@gmail.com. And you registered for this, so you should have gotten an email from me. So hopefully if you have that, you can just reply to that email. Any final thoughts from my team before we close out for the day, for the evening? Anybody?
I just want to seriously congratulate everyone. I don't know if that's the appropriate word, but it's how I feel for, again, giving yourself that opportunity to actually log on and then stay on And, you know, many times when we used to do these grief talks at coffee shops, whenever I open, I would always say, thank you for getting out of your car and walking into the building, because it takes a lot of commitment, right? It takes a decision for one, but commitment to really just follow through with that. And so I am very, very confident that tonight somebody in this platform was able to just speak to your heart and speak to, you know, helping you to heal and make sense of perhaps the craziness that you think you may be going through, and that you think you're alone, and you are not alone. And we go through those things moment to moment. We just have more commitment in the healing and recovery portion, and we have tools at the moment. So thank you so much.
I also want to say thank you to everyone that joined us on this platform. Just being here is your first step to healing your heart. Thank you.
Yeah. I just want to say thank you as well for this opportunity, and Darlene, Auntie Bobby, Michelle, and Raylene, just to be part of this evening's grief talk, and everyone that just signed on. Like as Michelle and Auntie Bobby said, thank you for your time and for joining us. And as we continue to journey through life together, we just hopefully, you know, as everything that has been shared tonight and Darlene has shared, that we can continue to bring this to our communities and bring this to our familia. So I'm just thankful again for tonight.
Yes, thank you all. I'm honored to have been a co-host here tonight. And giving yourself the gift of healing is definitely the best gift you can give yourself. And I just want to give a shout out to Gwendolyn Sinicola. She's a friend who joined us today. And I'm really happy she's here because today is actually her birthday, you guys. So she's
happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
We love you, Gwen. Thanks for having, spending your birthday with us. And we hope that, we hope that you found our present to you helpful.
Thank you also to my team that joined me here this evening. I always said that when I started my grief recovery journey that I didn't want to do it alone, because again, isolation is not something that we want to do, right? And I also realized that our island communities needed this service so much, and I knew that I couldn't do it alone. And so to have the honor of having all of these amazing individuals, my mom, who I consider my sister Michelle, Raylene's like a daughter to me, and then brother Fred in Saipan, and so many of our other grief recovery specialists that weren't able to join us today. I just want to, show gratitude to all of them because without them, we could not reach the masses the way we are doing today. I could not do this by myself. And so thank you guys for joining me tonight. And hopefully you'll come back on next week, and let's close this out strong next week and give our island communities, our family and friends, our brothers and sisters, the amazing tools and tips that we have as grief recovery specialists, and to continue to provide this safe platform for people. So I just want you guys to know that we did this every week because again, we were in partnership with is it Focus for Life, Michelle?
Guam Focus on Life with the Guam Behavior.
Yes, so we were in partnership with them in making sure that we were contributing to helping people out there that were contemplating suicide, just feeling isolated, that there is other resources out there. And we wanted to do our part in showing everybody what those are. So thank you again, team. Everybody in Guam and Saipan, have a great evening, guys. And I'm going to start my day. It's 7 o'clock in the morning here in Canada. So until next week, right? Good morning. Until next week, guys, have an amazing day. Love you all so much, and take care.
Bye-bye.
Hi, everybody.